In life, no one can avoid challenges. Financial difficulties, illness, broken relationships, or mental pain are all the challenges we face on our life journey. For those who have faith, these trials are not only difficult to overcome but also an opportunity to develop their faith. Faith through trial is not only a story of persevering in faith in God, but also how we find comfort, hope and strength in our darkest moments. Every challenge we encounter is not merely obstacles on the way forward, but also opportunities for us to re-examine ourselves, strengthen our faith and learn from those difficulties. For those who have faith in God, trials are not only things to suffer, but also lessons in patience, trust and maturity in spiritual life. Faith, when tested, not only helps us overcome difficulties, but also leads us to maturity and deeper understanding of God's love. Trials, part of the life of faith. Trials are an inevitable part of human life. Even those who believe in God are no exception. Jesus once warned his disciples that they would face difficulties. In the world you will have difficulties, but be courageous, I have conquered the world. John 16 verse 33. Faith is not a shield that protects us from all pain or difficulties, but the strength that helps us overcome them. It is through the trials that our faith is tested and tempered, like gold is refined through fire. In the Bible, we see many stories of people facing harsh challenges. Job is a good example. Despite the loss of all possessions, children and health, Job maintained faith in God. He did not understand why these trials came, but he knew that God was in control of everything. Job's faith is not the belief that everything will be easy, but the belief that no matter what happens, God is loving and just. Challenge the opportunity to grow faith. In the face of challenges, we often feel fear and disorientation. There are times when trials can make us doubt our faith. We ask ourselves, why did God let this happen to you? Or if you love me, why should I suffer so much? These questions are natural, and they don't mean we lack faith. On the contrary, they are a sign that we are looking for meaning and purpose in the challenges we face. In such moments, it is important that we realize that the challenge is not punishment from God, but an opportunity for our faith to grow. As in the letter of St. James, consider the test to be joy, knowing that the test of faith produces perseverance. John 1 verses 2-3. The difficulties not only help us to be more aware of our dependence on God, but also help us to grow more spiritually. The test teaches us patience, tolerance, and humility, helping us to become stronger in faith. Perseverance in prayer. In the face of the challenge, prayer becomes the greatest source of strength and consolation. In difficult times, prayer is not only a request for God's help, but also the way we connect with Him, seeking peace in His presence. Prayer is where we express our hearts, express our worries, and seek guidance. In the Bible, Jesus teaches us the importance of persevering in prayer through the parable of the widow and the unjust judge, Luke 18:1-8. The woman patiently and relentlessly asked the judge for her trial, and she was finally satisfied. This parable teaches us that, despite the long trial and whether we feel our prayers unanswered immediately, we must persevere, believe in God's mercy. Prayer does not change the situation immediately, but it changes the way we perceive the situation. It helps us to see that God is working, even if we cannot understand everything. Perseverance in prayer helps us learn to believe in God's plan, even if the way before us seems blurred. Hope Indiana faith. One of the hardest things to do in the face of a challenge is to hold on to hope. When things seem irretrievable, when pain and difficulty envelop us, hope seems far-fetched. But faith in God never abandons us in despair. St. Paul wrote, "We are proud even in our affliction, knowing that hardship is born of patience, patience is born of faithfulness, faithfulness is born of hope." Hope does not disappoint us, for the love of God has been poured into our hearts. Rom 5:3-5. Hope and faith is not the ambiguous hope that things will get better in our way. It is the certainty that, no matter how things go, God is still acting for our good. It is the hope that our life makes sense, that suffering is not meaningless, and that there is a bigger plan waiting for us. Hope helps us overcome the challenge, not because we believe that life will not be difficult, but because we believe that God will always accompany us in those difficult times. Faith does not promise that we will not encounter difficulties, but it promises that God will never leave us. Trials and their meaning in faith. The challenges we face can come from many different sources. It can be financial burdens, family uncertainties or close relationships, physical illnesses or mental pains that no one can comprehend. At times like this, we often wonder why these unwanted things happen to us, and sometimes even doubt the presence of God. In the Bible, however, we see very clearly that the test is not unusual in the life of a believer. Paul once said, "No test has happened to you, but is beyond human strength, for God is faithful. He will not let you be tested too much, but when he tries he will let you out, so that you can endure." 1 Corinthians 10 verse 13. This is the affirmation that God is with us in every situation. He knows our limits and will not let us suffer too much. The test is not a sign of abandonment, but an opportunity for us to train faith, patience, and fidelity to God. People with deep faith often realize that trials are not punishment, but part of the divine plan that God has for them. Challenges can help us better see aspects of ourselves that we have never realized, thereby changing and maturing. They teach us how to face suffering, not with complaint or fear, but with trust and entrustment to God. The power of faith in difficult times. One of the greatest lessons that faith teaches us is patience in difficult times. In the Bible, Abraham is a prime example of staying faithful in the face of seemingly insurmountable trials. God promised him and Sarah a child, but they had to wait decades before that promise was fulfilled. In the meantime, Abraham encountered many trials, but he never lost faith in God's promise. He kept his faith, and God finally fulfilled his promise by giving them Isaac, their son, despite Sarah being in her senior years. Through Abraham's story, we see clearly the power of faith in the face of trials. When we are patient and put our faith in God, we will realize that He always has a good plan for His life, no matter how long and difficult the test may be. Prayer also plays an important role in overcoming the challenge. For those who believe in God, prayer is not only the way we express pain, anxiety, and fear, but also the way we connect with God, seeking consolation and guidance from Him. Through prayer, we receive peace of mind and feel the presence of God, even in the darkest moments. As Jesus said, "Ask and it will be given, seek and it will be found, knock and it will be opened for you." Mt 7:7. This promise reminds us that, when we pray with confidence, God will respond in the best way for us. The challenge helps us to better understand ourselves and God. One thing that challenges often do is we recognize our smallness and weakness in the face of great difficulties. In the face of challenges that we cannot control or solve with our own strength, we realize that we need God more than ever. This helps us to acknowledge that we are not the center of the universe, and that our lives are not always going according to our plans. In this way, we learn to trust and entrust ourselves to God's providence. The test also helps us to deepen our understanding of God's love. In the face of suffering, we often feel lonely and abandoned. However, through suffering, God allows us to realize that He is always with us, even if we cannot feel His presence. As Jesus on the cross cried out, "My God, why have you abandoned me?" Mt 27:46. In the most desperate moment, Jesus still believed in His Father. He experienced the ultimate pain, then triumphed over death and gave hope to all mankind. Through trials, we learn that God never abandons us, even when everything around seems to collapse. He always accompanies us, sustaining us with His love and mercy. The challenge helps us to see that, even if everything in the world can change, God does not change. He is faithful and always loves us. Faith brings hope and salvation. In the face of trials, one very important thing that faith gives us is hope. The hope is that the fire keeps us from falling when things get dark. As Paul wrote, we know that all things contribute to the welfare of those who love God, Rom 8:28. Faith helps us to look beyond the present trials and realize that God is working in our lives, whether we see it clearly or not. Hope is not just to believe that things will get better, but to believe that God will lead us through all trials, and that we will find peace and joy in His love. Hope helps us to persevere, maintain faith and entrust all to God, knowing that He always has the best plan for our lives. Faith through the test is not only a test of fidelity to God but also a journey of maturity and understanding. Trials help us to recognize our own weakness, while strengthening our faith and hope in God. Through trial, we learn to be patient, to entrust, and to believe that everything is in His loving hands. In the end, the test is not a sign of failure or abandonment by God, but an opportunity for us to become stronger in faith, to trust and hope in God in all circumstances. It is in difficult times that our faith is tested, and from there we find peace and strength.